Diane Abbott is, notwithstanding her kind of pioneering and singular achievements as a black parliamentarian, she is regarded as a member of the hard left and of the Corbynite tendency. And Keir Starmer, as you outlined, has delighted in demonstrating to the public that that's not what he is part of and what his tradition is.
There's lots coming up in the day of politics, and here to talk me through is Sunday Times White Hello to Gabriel Pogrund. How are you?
I'm very well. I look a bit flustered. I look like a bit of a cherry to those listening. That's because I had a Lime bike disaster. So I'm here to campaign for there to be a law under the new Labour government prohibiting faulty, lurid green Lime bikes and human forests, for that matter.
Don't get me started on human forests. They are a scourge. I'm a big Lime bike aficionado, but we can talk about that in our own time, because there's big news from the campaign trail this morning, Gabriel. The biggest story of the day was one that appeared in neither party's grid, and that's Diane Abbott. This morning, she's confirmed the story on the front page of the Times from me and Stephen Swinford that she has been banned from standing for the party at the general election. Shortly after the announcement, Wes Streeting, who's of course the Shadow Health Secretary and a close ally of Keir Starmer, told Times Radio that he's not particularly comfortable with Abbott being barred from standing.
Well, I'm not responsible for the process. It's independent of politicians. What I am responsible for is Labour's position on the NHS.
Do you feel comfortable with it, though, Wes Streeting? Do you feel comfortable about what's happened here with Diane Abbott?
No, not particularly. I think this has gone on for a very long time. But, I'm here this morning to talk about the NHS waiting lists and what we do about them.
Do you think she's owed?
Do you think? And I say this with enormous respect for everything that Diane has achieved in politics, and I have a great deal of respect for what she's achieved in politics, actually.
Times Radio also heard from Hilary Shan, who's a former co-chair of Momentum.
This is just another example of Keir Starmer's factional game playing, lying in public. It's clear that his word can never be trusted. I think this is even worse than most activists even feared, the fact that it was actually concluded months ago. As I said, it's just another example of Keir Starmer's factional game playing. And this time it has the first black woman MP elected to Parliament as the victim. It's absolutely abhorrent.
That was Hilary Shan, the former director of the Corbynite campaign group Momentum. She also went on to say that she didn't understand how Keir Starmer had welcomed the former Tory MP Natalie Elphicke when he wasn't willing to accept Diane Abbott. Now, Martin Ford, the KC who compiled a report about racism, discrimination and anti-Semitism in Labour, also told us that the news about Abbott did not reflect well on Labour.
It strikes me as utterly shambolic for the whip to be restored yesterday and then for us to get this news moments ago. And in terms of media management, I think for a shadow cabinet minister such as Mr. Streeting not to be aware that this had happened, and certainly there's no transparency around process, is deeply disturbing. It's quite clear from a legal perspective that the Labour Party is in a sense a club, and it can determine who's a member and who isn't. But I find it astonishing that the process doesn't appear to be more transparent. And for a very long time, I've been saying, along with others, that what was said was said. I'm not an apologist for what was said at all. Rightly condemned, swift apology. Why has it taken so many months to investigate? I think the impact that I've been made aware of on the certainly the Afro-Caribbean vote is tremendous. I get WhatsApp messages predominantly from professional Black and Asian women who are utterly dismayed by the way that Miss Abbott's been treated.
Diane Abbott has just tweeted her views on this news. She says, naturally, I am delighted to have the Labour whip restored and to be a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party. Thank you to all of those who supported me along the way. I'll be campaigning for a Labour victory, but I'm very dismayed that numerous reports suggest that I've been barred as a candidate. And with that tweet, she has included a picture of this morning's Times front page. Gabriel Pogrund, what do you make of this all? It's been quite the 12 hours for the leadership of the Labour Party and for Diana, but, you know, this time yesterday it was unclear where the process was, then the Times story emerged, then the party publicly confirmed it had given her the whip back, and now Diane Abbott is confirming that she's not going to stand.
I think that this is an example of one of the few regards in which Labour has been wrong-footed by Rishi Sunak calling a snap election. This is one of those issues that, it's been a protracted, months-long investigation, which, as the BBC's outlined, has actually been completed for some time. It was a complicated, thorny issue in Sir Keir Starmer's in-tray, and the people around him expected to have possibly half a year or so in which to resolve it. It has sprung them as a great surprise, and there is a key distinction in terms of the optics and the reaction within the party to this versus Jeremy Corbyn's case. Corbyn was deemed, even by many of his comrades on the left, as an irritation, as a man incapable of basically shutting up when it would have served his and his political wing of the party's interests. Diane Abbott, it's because of her record and, because of her rapid apology, it's something which was beyond Corbyn at the time of his suspension, that has led to a lot of sympathy from, unexpected corners of the Labour movement. You had John McTernan, Blair's former political secretary, yesterday saying this was all intended to humiliate her. And in terms of, what Keir Starmer's doing over here, the thing that I'm just a bit bewildered by is the lack of clarity. We understand that they've tried to use the left to make a point to the country, trying to illustrate something about their direction of travel politically. But to do that, you need to look decisive. And I think that they've been caught a bit on the back foot. And I'm amazed to hear what Wes Streeting said.
Yeah, it's very interesting listening to Wes Streeting this morning. I mean, clearly, this is not what the Labour Party leadership would like to be talking about this morning. Wes Streeting sort of struggling in vain to get their NHS announcement out there, which we'll talk about in a second. But to what extent do you think people around Keir Starmer will be saying this morning, well, look, this isn't how we intended to spend day 6 of the campaign or day 7 of the campaign, but if what people remember at home and what they hear on the radio is Diane Abbott is not a Labour candidate. Hang on, I remember her. Wasn't she mates with Jeremy Corbyn? Notwithstanding the fact they want to downplay the parallels between the two cases, do you think cynics, realists in the Labour leadership might say this is all very unfortunate and it's a shame it's ended this way, but politically it's quite useful for us?
So I'll say 3 things in response to that classic rule of 3. One, I think there's a sort of feature of Keir's leadership, which is there are times when he is doing something politically, and he doesn't actually articulate why he's doing it. He changed the party's rules in 2021 to lock out the left for a generation. But it was only months later that the people around him actually started to tell a story about what was actually happening there. And only now do we see this arc. At the time, it was just interpreted as being a row. So I think there's the degree to which I find it just odd that Wes Streeting and the people around here haven't been equipped with a narrative to explain what's gone on. That's the first thing. Second, I have to say, I think there is some logic to that point. Diane Abbott is, notwithstanding her kind of pioneering and singular achievements as a black parliamentarian, she is regarded as a member of the hard left and of the Corbynite tendency. And Keir Starmer, as you outlined, has delighted in demonstrating to the public that that's not what he is part of and what his tradition is. The third thing I've just been reflecting on is, obviously Labour has these kind of gravity-defying poll leads, and there's no doubt that they're front runners, and this is not going to destabilise that. But I have detected just possibly a slight lack of focus in some of the messaging emanating from Labour in the first week of this campaign. I mean, I was a bit confounded that they allowed votes for 16-year-olds to dominate day 2 of the campaign. We've got Diane Abbott now. I mean, if their messages change and the economy, that's not what we're hearing about today. And it's, as you noted, not the NHS that's getting the airing that they want. So I think at some point, there are questions as to whether the campaign is as focused in this first week as it might have been.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn is going to launch his campaign as an independent candidate in the next door seat to Diane Abbott, Islington North, this evening. I mean, the Labour leadership, again, probably looking at that and thinking, great news, it just reinforces that Jeremy Corbyn is standing against us, that we've changed the Labour Party. But as you say, perhaps their messaging is a bit muddled, is not where it needs to be, is not as consistent as it needs to be. They're looking inwards. How are people around Jeremy Corbyn feeling about the prospect of his independent run? I
mean, it was one of those weird stories. Everybody on Fleet Street, or at least anybody who'd spoken to his inner sanctum, knew that he was going to run. And yeah, I think that there was something in Corbyn's soul that sort of couldn't quite believe that he wouldn't be running under red rosette come election time. But no, that it was inevitable that he would stand, and I think, to be honest, it sort of, he obviously feels bruised and has a fairly self-pitying tendency, and that probably characterises his position on this. I mean, I think you and I, in fact, went for a lunch with somebody recently who was telling us that George Galloway and some of his other comrades on the kind of fringes of the left just are almost bewildered by his never-ending love for the Labour Party and tradition and his identification with it. So it's not something he's doing comfortably. He sort of wishes this wasn't so, but the people around him are determined to give Keir Starmer a bloody nose, and there are people from sort of disparate parts of the left. A lot of his old comrades, the sort of band is getting back together, and they've been preparing this and collecting data and choreographing this for many, many months.
Yeah, I was speaking to a senior Labour aide last night who just ruled out of hand the prospect of the Labour Party keeping hold of that seat, which would be an inconvenience and a bit of a blow for Keir Starmer if Jeremy Corbyn was on the backbenches attacking his government constantly. I mean, it's notable, in response to your point earlier, Gabriel, about what this campaign and the message of change is meant to be putting across to the public. It's notable that we've spent about 10 minutes here discussing Labour internal rows and not what Wes Streeting wanted people to hear about this morning, which is their plan to clear NHS waiting list backlogs in England within 5 years, saying that the health service risks becoming a poor service for poor people. But that's the nature of the row that started in the Labour Party today. It's overshadowing everything else.